Don't take off my mask, revealing dark.
You're listening to the Zetetic Newscast on the Zetetic News Network with your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Riddle. Proceed by inquiry.
All right, welcome to episode 36 of the Zetetic Newscast. We're your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Riddle. It is July the 8th, 2022, and we are live, broadcasting across the plane on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and Theta.tv. Thank you guys for joining us. We've got an awesome show planned for you guys today. Just want to do a couple housekeeping items and sort of kick the conversation off. First of all, this might be the last full show for a little while. I'm expecting a newborn, here in the next few weeks. So I'm probably going to take a little time off, although I'll be taking some time off of the legacy job. And hopefully we'll have some gaps where we can do some like cyber chats or other shorter pieces. I might be able to focus on some other things that I've wanted to get done, like chapterizing all of our shows, right. Maybe clipping up some of our shows and uploading those. So look out for that. We are, if you look at the top bar, we're on BitChute, Theta TV, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, BitTube, Gab. We have an RSS feed, a podcast feed, Rumble, and our website, Zetetic.news, where we try to bring all this stuff together and more. You can check out the menu bar. We've got live channels, Flat Earth Debate, InfoWars, different news aggregator sections, and we're always adding to this as well. We recently added Payman Motahede, the president founder of Freedom Law School, to the Taxes and Lawfare page. We're trying to get Adam Green from No More News on the show. He actually might call in today. I hope we reach out to him. But if not, that's cool. We can set up a time. But we like his content. Yeah, we'll put it right next to the Alex Jones channel on Zetetic.news. Just so you have the that's real fair and balanced if you want to go the Fox News route. But but why not? Why not? Why exclude a news source if there's some truth to it, I think. And there certainly is with what Adam's bringing to the table. So Xavier's a lot more familiar with his work. I did listen to Adam's show, at least maybe 45 minutes to an hour of it yesterday. Dropped a comment here and there. So anyways, shout out to Adam Green and No More News. We're going to set up an embed just like we've done here, with Freedom Law School. If you're just listening, on the video component, we're showing our website where we've got the YouTube video gallery of different stuff. So that's that. Also, last episode, we talked a little bit about some of the recent updates with Theta. They did announce that they pushed an update to all the edge nodes, which added decentralized video encoding that supports the Theta Video API. And I talked about this before, not just on the last show, but on previous shows about the Theta Video API. That's kind of like where we're headed with our premium content and the integration at Zetetic.news, so that we can be independent from censorship and other kinds of nefarious shadow banning types of activities. And not only can we control the sort of the financial side of things, but possibly down the road, our users could be compensated for engaging with our content. And this is a good next step, because what this does is it starts to pay people who are running edge nodes for not just these proof of concept jobs that they've been doing, which you don't get paid very much for, but it opens it up to the market to where someone like Zetetic.news can go to the Theta Video API, send it some T-fuel, and then that gets distributed. I don't know exactly how, but it gets distributed to the edge node operators who are actually responsible for the relaying and or storing of the video content that you're hosting there. So, there's more details to come about this, but I guess all the edge nodes now are updated if they're running, and they'll start to see more jobs, which means more T-fuel for them. And of course, this gets us closer to that point where, we're truly recycling all of our T-fuel, not all of it, but we're recycling the T-fuel back into the operation itself to sort of prove out and build really the first next generation news network powered by the Theta blockchain, which is one of our other taglines. The other one, of course, being proceed by inquiry, which, dovetails into the broader conversation today, which, of course, there's no legal advice, no financial advice. None of us are anybody. We might as well be nobody. But it's entertainment purposes only, education purposes only. We're actors, etc. All those disclaimers. Proceed by inquiry, but maybe there's something to some of the information we're bringing to the table. So that's housekeeping. To kick off the conversation, I was thinking about what the word of the day should be. And it's not Thursday. It's not Thesaurus Thursday. It's Friday. But our word of the day is guide. And anybody listening to this is probably, it's probably obvious why we picked that term, because of the event earlier this week where the Georgia Guidestones were sort of not inexplicably exploded, but I don't think there's a formal explanation other than it was an explosion, and we have some video clips of a car driving at the same time. And so I thought this is a good word because, its meaning is to obviously lead, direct. Obviously, the physical definition is a physical object that points you a certain way. But it's also sort of like, supposed to show you the way. And so more than just like a physical direction, it could be more of like
almost like a forceful, like, reproach, because that's embedded into it. It's like, I'm showing you the way because you're doing something wrong, kind of. Guidance comes to mind of, it's like, this CDC guidance. There's a little bit of a force behind that.
Well, they always provide their recommendations, and I was talking to my wife earlier today about the conversation we had when we were hanging out this past weekend about genetic counseling, and how we know some folks who are involved in this industry, and one time they were asked about, well, do you recommend abortions based on some of these genetic factors that you're supposedly assaying? So, no, we don't recommend that. It's just like, we just provide the guidance. Like, we provide you the information and let you make your own decision. It's like, okay, sure, yeah. But like mid 14th century, one who shows the way, a verbal noun for guider, in books titles from 1610s, meaning book of information on local sites for dummies, or like Idiot's Guide to, that sort of thing. And
literally guide ass.
Right. And so when in that context, right, like, a lot of people don't even know what the Georgia Guidestones are until today or this week, right? And I found an old chat I had with a friend back in 2008 where he had learned about the Guidestones. He's like, really? This is like a monument that people stop by and in Georgia, and wow, like, I feel like driving my truck down there right now and busting it down because
what it says on there.
Exactly. So it's a guide stone, and it's showing us the way. It's like, the future for dummies. Like, this is all we got to do is just these tenets. But I'm trying to pull up and
it was commissioned by some shadowy figure that used a pseudonym, and they could be referring to sort of the whole Rosicrucian epoch-based take on history, and that these elite leaders are going to tame the dragon or something of world population and bring it in balance within nature.
Yeah, you can look up the Wikipedia, the different inscriptions. I won't go over them. They have obvious exterministic undertones and world government undertones. If you're not familiar with them, I mean, this is like world conspiracy 101. What I found most interesting in the Wikipedia, and of course Wikipedia is barely an information source as far as like exposing who might be behind this, but it's all been kept pretty, under wraps. Nobody really knows who it was, although Alex Jones claims it was Ted Turner.
Or someone affiliated with him.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to find the part where the actual granite company was talking about their interaction with this guy who is named, but it's under, pseudonym. In June 1979, a man using the pseudonym Robert C. Christian approached the Elberton Granite Finishing Company on behalf of a small group of loyal Americans. Joe Findley of Elberton Granite believed that Christian was a nut and attempted to discourage him by providing a price quote for the commission, which was several times higher than any project the company had previously taken, explaining that the Guidestones would require additional tools and consultants. To Findley's surprise, he just accepted the quote like on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And what was really fascinating to me also reading through this is the first act of vandalism took place in the same year that chat I mentioned a minute ago was had, 2008. And it was only after then that they set up cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you go over to, where is it? Let's look at the footage. So here's the footage that was released by the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, which obviously anytime you get a video release from an FBI or a SDI or
it's showing you the least important
CIA, and they do that jump cut right at the explosion.
Exactly.
Why? The other camera's still running.
Right. Because you'd be able to deduce from that the ballistics,
where it might be coming from.
Yeah, there's some sort of impact.
Yeah, there's this cloud back here. Let's see if I can pause it. See back here under this lamp?
Right.
Some suggested it was like a RPG.
Right.
Which, let's be real, guys. If these things are like on the black market in Iraq, they are on the black market in America too.
Notice the fisheye lens attribute to this camera.
Yeah.
I see the curve.
Yeah. We got some space news coming up on the show today as well, but we don't have to get off on that jag right now.
Continent-sized Guidestones.
Yeah, it's curve everywhere. But yeah, I mean, the Guidestones are guiding us where exactly? I mean, if it's some wealthy proprietor like Ted Turner, who's arguably in control of quite a deal of, resources and human resources and capital and land and stuff like that, have they really, have they achieved the goal? What does this symbolize? The destruction of it. It's also interesting that there was like a candidate for, I think, some high office in Georgia who actually stated in her campaign that she wants to see this thing destroyed.
It's interesting.
But then she came out and said, if it was vandalism, then those people should be brought to justice.
So it is, as long as there's an approved destruction and vandalism by the state, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which did happen for safety reasons.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think that we have to go after more than just the Guidestones when it comes to the guidance that they're forecasting.
Right.
You know, because there's lots of echelonic, oligocentric blocks of coalitions and well-resourced bodies that may want to just destroy the evidence. You're like, we can't have people remembering that we commissioned these.
Well, what's
things,
interesting is there's a time capsule 6 feet underneath,
and that remains.
And I forget if there was an inscription as to what year it was to be opened, or was it left blank?
Later in the century, 2070 or something. It was later on.
And that's, if they dug that up and took that away, there's not, GBI is not going to release any video of that.
Right. It's interesting. I mean, it's very kind of ominous in a way, because what sort of monuments are destroyed for what reasons at any given time? It's usually to eradicate a legacy, or censor history, or stigmatize anyone who brings up things that are pertaining to the monument or the statue or
Well, some had
memorial.
pointed out that the Hebrew side, because the inscription is written in English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, traditional Chinese, and Russian. It says the languages were chosen because they represented most of humanity, while Hebrew was chosen because of its connections to Judaism and Christianity. How do they know this? How is this in the Wikipedia if this guy is a pseudonym and we only have like circumstantial musings about him from the people who actually erected it? I mean, what's the citation here? Stone Bear Note for the Future. This is an old news article. 6 granite monoliths stand
I
on
see it. The languages were chosen because they represent the largest section of humanity. In Hebrew, quote, because of its association with the Judeo-Christian tradition.
But I mean,
and with an appreciation for scholarship. Okay, that's pretty interesting there. So it's almost like...
But this was published in some Elberton newspaper. That guy, Christian or whatever his pseudonym was, he's not quoted here unless he just like told the newspaper that this is why, like, hey, I'm going to tell you what it's all about, but my identity's not to be revealed. And they went along with that. I mean, that's what I'm inferring from this. It's not like an actual quotation.
Mm-hmm. From the person who commissioned
Yeah, so
right?
to me, it was whitewashed from the beginning. Obviously, it's kind of like if you ask the Denver International Airport what the meanings are behind their murals. Oh, it's just this painted, this artist's interpretation. The blue horse doesn't mean anything. Yeah, nothing nefarious. The Freemasonic capstone there, nothing. It's just dedicated.
Yeah, I mean, these are just
so spooky.
Just coincidences, right?
Do you think this is accelerating the mass awakening to the symbolism and sort of the gang signs everywhere from this world mafia?
I think that this is an indication that there is a growing awareness and a substantiated discontentment against elite symbology that's sort of paraded around in everyone's face, as the governing sigils over society and human civilization. I think that there is an awakening to the use of symbols and coded language as a basis for deception, and ends justify the means, and the apocalypse justifies the prophecies, agenda fulfillment, self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah, Adam Green talked about that a bit, talking about, actually Alex Jones and
way back in the day.
What is it? The third temple, a prophecy, and how it is being fulfilled. And he said something that really struck me, was, I thought, very poignant. He said, prophecy is predictive programming.
That's sort of...
it's like you write it down so that you can manifest it, and that's kind of like their modus operandi.
Yeah, I mean it's a script. It's a sort of blueprint, encoded. You could even call it sort of an egregoric manifestation text.
Well, it's like
Yeah.
but they build this eschatology around it, this belief system, and they have to make it come true.
Right, because that's what justifies the sort of craziness in the first place.
Yeah.
Of predicting such, obscene and, arcanely ordained things,
Yeah.
And yeah, it's that need to reify and edify this really kind of superiority complex.
Yeah.
That, well, yeah, we can predict the future, and we're going to decide everyone's destiny based on our preferences and attitudes and proclivities, and it's this very the term supremacy is sort of overused, but I think that it's hegemonic hubris is really what it is at the end of the day. That, oh, we can create a hegemony, and we deserve to be proud to lord it over everyone, and this is how we brag about our conquest.
Yeah, I wish we had a call in the queue, because I'd love to get some thoughts from the metaverse about the Guidestones and their destruction, what you think it means. But we don't have anybody in the queue yet, which is cool. But I should mention, I didn't in the intro, our number is 1-855-877-5112. And we're awarding the first and last callers in the queue on today's show with 100 T-Fuel. So there's your compensation drives motivation. Take a work break and come call ZNN and weigh in on this. Yeah. But yeah, I've thought about the Guidestones since at least 2008, as mentioned, and that's really when I started to become aware of the broader conspiracy, let's call it. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a horrible symbol, and obviously, whether it was Ted Turner, putting down on words what the Round Table wants to do or not, you don't even need to look at the Guidestones to see that that's what they want to do. They're out there saying it to your face, like the whole deindustrialization, the disruption of the supply chain, the commitment to phase out combustion vehicles by like 2035 or something like that.
That's absurd.
I mean, you're talking about a genocide. You're talking about ending a way of life for vast millions of people. And man, they got a lot of work to do, because there are way more than 500 million people on the plains. So I don't think their plan is going very well, and I personally really enjoyed seeing that explosion. I just would rather see longer, more high def. I want interviews with who blew it up. I want to know. I want the time capsule dug up. I want to see what's going on there. Mm-hmm. And yeah, overall, I'm happy about it.
Yeah, I mean,
I celebrated.
It's a repudiation of an oligarchical symbol. So I think in that sense, it is a positive. But there's plenty more monuments and statues and things that are brought up that have yet to be dismantled.
Absolutely.
In this way. So, and there's plenty more out there. The Washington Monument, the Vatican Monument.
Oh my God! Can you imagine
all these
the
obelisks,
11 miles or whatever number of miles of basement, like libraries and so on, underneath the Vatican? Yeah, let's get in there.
Yeah. Let's try and get in there. That would be good. And there's probably dozens more that are of similar size.
How about the truth of old world constructions?
Right.
And maybe that's a good segue to one of the other big topics I wanted to bring up, and that is, broadly speaking, the world cover up, like literally the world cover up, like not just the shape of it, but for example, here's a picture
There you go.
from Sintra, Portugal. This is supposedly a well. Look at there's a mosaic at the bottom of that thing. Okay, it says this well was never built to store water, but rather for secret ceremonial purposes. It's full of esoteric themed symbols and everything related to alchemy, occult sciences, astrology, esotericism, Freemasonry, Templars, and Rosicrucians.
Right.
And look at I'd like to see like a drone shot of what, but that's obviously like drilled into the bedrock.
Holy moly.
What kind of effort? No wonder they're called the Freemasons, all the stonemasons and whatnot. Because they probably hold the secrets to what's going on with all this old world construction. Mm-hmm. And how come these very primitive people can do things that we just can't even imagine right now?
Well, because they probably weren't so primitive. Yeah.
Here's another one. Oh, and I wanted to bring this up to you because we were talking about this when we were hanging out. These supposed 19th century constructions that were, they were just up.
Yeah.
And we had them for a short period of time, and then they were demolished, and in their wake are like these hideous steel glass boxes.
Yep.
But what I want to bring up is, there's all this city architecture that we could talk about, like the New York subway system.
The Philadelphia City Hall.
There's like a mental institution out in Utah, I think you talked about, or one of the big Mormon churches.
Yep.
But the one I want to talk about with you on the weekend is the World's Fair.
Absolutely.
Which we maybe touched on a little bit in some of our prior shows, but not really delved deep. But the World's Fair, if you want to like blow your own mind, go look into that. And of course, they still have these World's Fairs, supposedly, but not like they did back in the day.
Right. And how was Melbourne, Australia constructed again? Melbourne is another great one.
Well, talk about it.
Well, because the supposed population of Australia during the time was mostly Aboriginals. Very, very few people who you would anticipate build these kind of things were able to build them, apparently without a whole lot of resistance, inexplicably. Again, it's like how are these things constructed with the present populations during the time?
Yeah, we got a couple of comments here from Nano CBD making 2 points. The Georgia Guidestones are exactly 666 miles from the United Nations in New York City.
That's right.
And the Washington Monument is 555 feet above ground and 111 feet underground. So, do the math.
Do the math.
Yeah, it's just uncanny. But these the World's Fair and these different like exhibitions took place in the early part of the 1900s and late part of the 1800s, and these like empty country lands where they just constructed these massive and palatial buildings and constructions. And you know what they'll tell you is like, oh yeah, it was all like sort of like plaster of Paris, and was it? I don't know.
Come on. These things were like power stations or something that we just sort of repurposed and put, glass windows in and, made it into something that could be inhabited. But, I mean, we have no idea the scale of personage that actually built this. We have an inkling that they were significantly larger. But if you've ever seen the movie Prometheus, excluding all the sort of space sci-fi stuff, the message of that film kind of eerily resembles some of the possibility of construction on this scale with methods that we hitherto cannot replicate. So, I mean, it begs the question, like, what else is being hidden in terms of not just history, but perhaps the realm in which we reside. You know, if you think that news is fake, which it certainly is, a vast preponderance of the time on the main, especially in the mainstream, think about how bad mainline history is.
Well, what blows my mind, right, is and we're gonna maybe a good segue to, because to me the old world construction cover-up conspiracy ties right into the sort of, let's call it the flat Earth cover-up conspiracy,
Or the realmist,
the realm, the planate, topic of discussion.
Water
but,
is a huge giveaway.
Well, water is a massive giveaway, but what I was going to say is the conception of the world given to us from the astrophysicists is this spherical, close to 26,000 miles around ball, which you can then calculate exactly if you want to, dig a hole to China from one end to the other, how much space is in between one side of the other, right? And that's their conception of, and of course we can't do that, right? Because of the whole magma, phenomenon, that's molten nickel ball or whatever that's in the center.
They allege. There's no...
Right, but we've only ever drilled 8 or 9 miles deep. And we've also been able to explore vast cavernous structures. I mean, they're growing crystals out of these things that are the size of a double doorway,
Right.
And there are still civilizations, let's say tribes, whatever you want to call them, in places that have really not come into contact at all with, quote, modern civilization. So if you get your head around the idea that maybe the Earth isn't the spinning ball that's 26,000 miles around with a molten core center, and that it's actually something hitherto unexplored,
right,
as far as its vastness in the horizontal directions, we have no idea how deep it is either,
right,
and how much cavernous. What blows my mind too is we use a well, and I'm walking on dry land, but there's just like a straw, like 100-foot straw, and underneath there's just water. Right. So we have to totally change our conception of, obviously where we came from, what has been here before, but like what we're on, what's below us, what's above, Well,
yeah,
you have to deprogram that.
You have to take away the modernist assumption and the epistemological hubris that says, oh yeah, we have amazing methods that can figure just about everything out. We know everything there is to know about XYZ, and we certainly know a lot more than we can prove empirically or forensically about the sky, and just the beginning of everything. And I mean, it's, if you look at like the Big Bang, like this is cosmic egg theory. It goes back to Kabbala, the Ein Sof, contracting, and then
sorry for that. We had a little burp in the action due to an internet issue, but we're back. And we're going to be high paced now since we missed some time. All right. So we were talking about the hard sciences and how what they tell you is not what it really is,
Yeah,
they're always changing it, and that's supposed to be science, but at the same time it's rigid and it's whatever they say at the moment.
Yeah, it's based on manufacture of consensus and presumed unexaminable premises and inscrutable methodologies that can't be like really replicated other than through their private purview.
Yeah.
And the thing I was touching on right as the stream cut out last time was that what we consider the hard sciences have actually been just as much influenced by this kind of spiritual alchemy, ancient mystery school, Kabbalistic, cosmogenesis type thinking that is in itself highly belief-based, inherently speculative.
I think I have a good article to evidence this. It's funny. Trump was laughed at by his detractors for announcing, and I consider myself one of them, you know, the Space Force. It's interesting, as much as they hate the guy, it's still in play or something. This is from June 3rd. How the U.S. Space Force plans to police outer space. Outer space is getting crowded with both commercial endeavors and secretive military projects. Okay, maybe it is. Maybe they're so secretive that our upper atmosphere is polluted with all sorts of surveillance platforms and this and that. But the idea that our outer space, like this whole vacuum of space beyond the gravity perimeter of the Earth, where everything orbits and all that shit, and they're policing it, and there's space trash, and it's this big threat, and like even the David Wilcock people, you know, oh, the aliens are here to keep us from blowing ourselves up, you know, and Stephen Greer weaponizing space, and that ties into the whole nuclear fraud as well, you know, the big bomb scare tactic that they use
Right.
to control the nuclear waste industry. But just before you chime in, that space is crowded. Have you ever been on an airplane and see how not crowded the actual Earth is?
Right.
What were you going to say?
I was just going to say that it's actually the psyop of the cosmological construct that allows for this.
That's where you talk
reference.
about spiritual alchemy
Right.
and egregores and stuff. This
Yeah.
is all fiction in people's heads.
Yep.
It's not real.
Yep.
The whole Jeff Bezos space tourism, it's just a little carrot on a stick to get you to continue to believe in the technocracy,
Yes.
you know?
And you know, lone scum.
They become
Elon
priests,
Musk, like,
priests of outer space, because they've been to this orgasmic place that you're never going to be able to afford to get to.
exactly.
It's the Elysium paradigm.
Yeah, and the Elysium paradox, which is like, you know, it's not up in the air where the so-called elite are going. It's actually underground.
Yeah.
So if there's that just tells you right there that we do not have dominion over the luminaries in the sky and the purview of what those light sources really even are.
Well,
we just have projections and patterns of
before-
belief and manufactured consensus.
Since we're already on this topic of space fraud, flat Earth, old world construction cover up, let's just go ahead and cover this as part of that topic before
Yes.
we take our first caller. We see a 434 number on the line. Thank you for holding. If you'll just bear with us for a few more minutes, I just want to sort of conclude this bit of information before we move on to whatever it is you want to talk about. But there was a good conversation on the Zetetic.news Telegram about this subject with a member, Riley, who was on the show a couple shows ago, called in asking about evidence around talking points in favor of the quote flat Earth theory. I heard something about how the Earth is in the shape of a prism, and there was a good discussion. I'm not going to read through it, but we provided some source material from Eric Dubay. I think that's probably the best starting point on this subject. If you go Google talking points on flat Earth, you're probably going to get some sort of
Professor Dave.
Yeah, Professor Dave or Mark Sargent or whatever, where there's a definitive model around this disc. And I like Eric Dubay because
It's more ambiguous.
it's more like the honest answer is
Right.
we don't,
You don't
really
really know.
know because we're
Right.
not really allowed to basically explore it. However, what we do know is what they claim, meaning the astrophysics authority figures, and we can, with 200 different proofs, basically say that's bunk. So given that that's bunk and there's no real rebuttal to that, we have to proceed by inquiry and look at things a little bit differently. So anyways, the conversation was really good. I think you might have chimed in and provided some points, pointing out, globes are inherently imaginary. Universal Studios had a globe revolving in the vacuum of space as their logo some 40 years before the moon landings. And a lot of people who A lot of people do believe that the moon landings were a hoax, but then you bring up this subject and they're like, I can't go there.
No, the globe is operational.
Well, then it's like, well, what do you think
science.
the motive of the moon landing was? If it's a hoax, what was the motive? And they're like, oh, I don't know, just
Cold War,
Russian,
flexing.
tech supremacy, which is what they tell you it was for.
That's tier 1.
That's what they told you
Yeah.
it was for, right?
Yeah, that's the official plausible deniability explanation. But yeah, the globe. I just want to read the rest of that post right quick. The globe goes back to pre-Pythagorean days with the Samothracian Kabiri, and they're the initiates who worship these deities, who they mystically imagined that the gods of the pantheon were embodied as great orbs in the forms of the lights in the sky. The globe is basically a mystery school invention used to, quote unquote, empower initiates to imagine themselves as demigods, who are the beings who rule over the goddess Gaia, aka the orb body of the earth. Again, within this ancient mystery school that goes back, a long ways, guys, and has actually influenced a lot of the shaping of modern day religions as well. So it's very interesting where you see a lot of these like Christian creationist types will genuflect to the globe still. That's
why I'd love to have Adam Green on the show to talk with you about how that came to be. Obviously we can recognize that the world's religions are a control mechanism, but I think flat earth and that whole subject is often left out of the conversation in regards to that.
But the whole modern conception of like everything revolves around the sun, etc., that was Copernicus, and that was 50 years before Galileo's musings. The telescopic imagery is in itself misleading because the kind of glass magnification technique used on the light sources in the sky artificially kind of sphericize the light source in question, rendering it more solid looking than is actually the case. And if you compare like a 100x telescope versus a 1000x digital high definition zoom on, say, Mars, and you see that Mars is not as solid looking as it appears through a much lower resolution telescope. It's actually much more various in its shape and contours and light, and it seems much more etheric and plasmatic than an actual
the luminaries in the
place.
sky, you mean?
Right. They're not places you can land.
Because there was a discussion about what about the moon? We've heard from certain whistleblowers that there's an actual base on there, and certain people say it's credible, and by the same token, you have to understand anybody saying that they participated in some sort of secret space program, they were a part of the military-industrial complex, and they might be getting a fragment of the truth, but they could easily be deceived themselves, even on an experiential point of view, because the earth is so vast and because the military industrial complex has access to all the best technology, they can easily create a scenario from any prying eyes where, say, someone is taken to a remote location that takes 72 hours to get to, or 30 days to get to. It could be totally underground and a fabricated environment to look like, a Mars colony or a moon base or something like that. I mean, just look at what they do with the movies. Mm-hmm. And now this augmented reality, which it's now filtered down to the consumer retail market. You can literally buy a headset and go, quote, explore the world through the headset. So they've had that for probably 40, 50, 60 years. And then we don't even know what they have in terms of implants. Forget about putting a screen over your eyes, which you obviously feel and know that you're doing. And so it's kind of like going into a movie theater. You're telling yourself this isn't a real experience, and so you can enjoy it as like a fiction. But if they like wire into certain people's, they can just, who knows? And the reality is none of us have been, to quote the moon, right? So how can you just believe what the government tells you about it?
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
And ultimately, you have to be. You have to believe what the government's telling you about it, because whenever you ask for proof of, say, the shape of the Earth, most people will just reference government-created images.
Absolutely, and I'm trying to pull up this. If you actually go to the ZNN,
I'll drop it in there.
The Telegram. I'm actually gonna post this now.
Oh, well, while you post it,
there we go.
Oh yeah, I did watch this. We'll play it in a minute.
This is key.
Well, I sent this to you. I just posted it in the ZN before we go to that, because now that I'm a cretin who's questioning my reality,
a miscreant.
Right. I look at things totally different. Here I'm in the yard. All right, Xavier, riddle me this. It's almost 2:00 in the afternoon, and you can fucking see the moon. Now, if the moon is there, and it's in the sky for people at night on the other side of the world, and the crescent is like our shadow being cast by the sun, but the sun is right there.
Yeah.
How? They're juxtaposed in the sky. It doesn't make any sense at all. The sun shines in all directions
at the same time,
right?
Yeah, but
according to them,
right? They have this garbledy-gook thing about parallel lines and how our eyes can't properly triangulate the actual orientation in space and all this stuff. I mean, it's garbledy-gook.
And so they ultimately will end up drawing a cartoon for you instead of you going out and looking at things for yourself.
Right.
Okay. So let's play your clip here.
Yeah.
This was very revealing.
When I first made the correlations between Kabbala and science, I was stunned.
We do know that Isaac Newton had access to certain mystical texts, certain texts of the Kabbala.
Well, the Kabbalistic description of creation is coming from a single little point, from a speck, and of having matter form and time and space form all together at the very beginning. This sounds very much to me like the description of the Big Bang.
I couldn't believe that the Kabbalists could derive these truths without really knowing any mathematics or physics.
It is certainly true that in string theory, the number 10 is the dimension of space-time for supersymmetrical string theories, and 26 for bosonic string theories stand out as a requirement of the mathematics.
All the things that could destroy string theory, all the things that do destroy every rival theory to string theory, they are all eliminated in precisely 10 and 26 dimensions. These dimensions are magic. We physicists don't know where these dimensions come from.
The Zohar says those things. It could just have been a lucky guess. I don't know.
The Zohar speaks of impure fats and pure fats, and that relates very well to modern medicine's view of the two types of cholesterol.
Now you tell me, how come that's the only text with 2,000 years old can have that kind of information so clearly there?
They knew things about the universe that took us till now to discover.
I think it's rather intriguing that the Zohar mentions cholesterol and mentions the liver and bile.
What I like about Kabbalah is that it has a rather profound view of
he's sitting in front of a telescope.
A creator of a divine being that transcends all possible notions that we could have.
There can be an interface between science and spirituality.
The Zohar's notion that light is a realm of no time and no space is quite consistent with special relativity.
What's been stopping it so far are, number one, the lack of a good concept, and I think the Kabbala is offering that now in the context of modern science. And two, a reticence on the part of both scientists and people in religion to mix the two.
It's rather amazing, this uncanny reflection of some of the most advanced cosmology coming from our satellites, coming from our atom smashers, coming from our blackboards, that are mirrored in the Zohar and ancient Kabbalistic texts.
And that's a video that's kind of like highlighting, look, how profound is this? This is so cool. So this is someone who like is trying to validate Kabbala based on current scientific musings. Well, if you know anything about the Kabbala, it actually discredits the entire fabrication of this cosmology industry, the fake cosmology industry, essentially.
So what are they getting off on?
I think they're getting off on just being able to be highly sophisticated in deceptive concepts. You know, I mean, I think a lot of it is just the
to me, it's just gobbledygook. It is such gobbledygook.
Well, I mean, it's string theory and astrophysics and all this stuff. It shows you that the foundations of this speculative projectionism, which is really all it is, it's basically taking atomistic ideas and projecting them out on unfathomable scale in an outside, inner, outer, divisive manner. So it's like another form of schizophrenia in a way, because we have quantum mechanics, right, that is supposed to be all about the super minute, and if you look at a lot of quantum mechanics too, there's quite a bit of mysticism there as well. And when you look at this macro micro paradigm, this cosmology that we've dealt with the sciences, you see that it reinforces a pre-existing cosmological trend that's been intact within the world for quite some time. So it's not something that's a amazing genius discovery. It's not something that's highfalutin knowledge about the actual world. It's really just formalistically projected mysticism through mathematics and theoretical.
Let's just look at if you're just listening, you got to tune in to one of the live streams so you can see our screen here. Let's just tune over to Scientific America. What quantum mechanics can teach us about abortion? As light can exist as both a particle and a wave, an abortion provider can honor birth and fight for a person's right to give birth when it's right for them.
Let's read that last part of the sentence. An abortion provider can honor birth and fight for a person's right to give birth when it's right for them. Okay, that's a nice euphemism there at the end. So basically they're saying that an abortion provider can honor birth and be an advocate for people eliminating the fetus's ability to be born. So again, more schizophrenia, more doublethink, more Orwellian thought matrix gobbledygook. Schrodinger's cat, right? It's both alive and dead.